to Up and Comers of Hollywood. I want to thank you so much for stopping by, for coming back again. I'm your host, Marie Finch. I'm so excited about today's guest. She's a good friend of mine. Her name is Lia Asher. She's a multi-talented voiceover artist, actress, singer, and musician. Not only does she speak different languages, she's an expert in dialects and accents, which makes her very important in the voiceover world. And she'll talk about her journey and her successes and challenges with being a voiceover actress, an actress, and a musician. Lia Asher, thank you so much for coming and visiting Up and Comers of Hollywood. I'm so excited. I have a really good friend. Her name is Lia. She's sitting right next to me. And what's better than having a podcast with one of your closest friends here in Hollywood? And I met Lia on set when I first got to LA. But how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on this amazing podcast of yours. I feel really privileged and lucky to be here.
Well, I'm so excited because you have so much to share with her.
I am originally from the South. I was born in Tallahassee, Florida, where I did some acting and a little bit of modeling out there when I was younger. I also lived abroad. I lived in Israel for about 3 years, and I eventually made my way to New York City. I did school in Florida, but I ended up going to graduate school and at Columbia in New York City. I ended up taking some acting classes. The joke with my family that they like to say is I ended up getting a master's in education at Columbia. The day I graduated, I booked my first acting role. Sorry, mom and dad. And that was my acting journey. And I ended up getting a lot of auditions in Los Angeles. So I felt like my type was more in LA. And I ended up getting a couple auditions, a lot of callbacks for the show Glee in LA. So I was like, my name is Lia Asher. My initials are LA. I thought it was a sign. I need to move to LA. So that is how I ended up here.
I love that. Your initials are LA.
Yes.
That's epic. I love that.
I went to Israel when I was kindergarten, first grade. I also ended up going to Finland for a little bit. So my mother is Hispanic. My father is Middle Eastern, grew up in Israel. And ironically, it's my mother's family I'm very close to. My aunt is actually the ambassador of El Salvador in Israel. And her other sister works for some amazing hospital. It does a lot of medical research in Israel. And so because of 2 out of 3 sisters, my grandmother moved to Israel. So my mother wanted to be closer to her family. And then because my dad's family is there as well, we ended up moving to Israel for a bit. So it was a little bit over 3 or so years that I actually lived in Israel.
That explains why you speak different languages.
I do. But English was my third language. So growing up, Spanish was my first. And then I spoke Hebrew, and I ended up taking other languages in school. So because I lived abroad, I think that's why. And my aunt married a guy from Finland. So we used to go to Finland a lot as well. And I think that's how I was able to pick up the languages.
Saw that your voice of the PlayStation in Israel. So
I am, yes.
Your languages and your dialects and your accents that you specialize in has really helped you in that field. Can you explain how you got into the voiceover business when you came to LA, or kind of give us a little background on that?
Of course. I've always really flourished and loved the idea of playing with my voice and the manipulation of it and doing different accents. I remember, especially when I was younger, you'd want a song on the radio or you'd want something. So instead of just me calling, I would come up with an accent and be like, oh yeah, hi, I'm calling. Can you do that? Play that song for me. And then I'd use a different accent. Yeah, there's a special song I want. And then I'd call with my normal voice. Yeah, can you play that certain song? And the DJ would be like, wow, I've had like a few people call for that exact same song. And I was like, winner. So it's helped me get certain things, I would say. And so I've definitely always been interested in that and using my voice. And so I started taking a lot of classes in New York City. That's really how it started. Just learning how to really manipulate my voice and change it. And when I came to Los Angeles, we ended up going, I found a few websites that I was able to go on. There's some really great websites for people starting out. There's Voice123, voices.com. I highly recommend those. A lot of people say that those are pay to play, that you're taking those kind of classes, but I would say those are really good ones for anyone starting out. Just to put your reel on there, you could just record your voice, put it on there, and that's really how I started even getting certain jobs. You have to pay to get on those, but voices.com, voices123, you can create a profile without putting your name or without paying for it. And I just started putting some Hebrew voices on there, Hebrew demos, and clients started finding me. And I ended up getting some lucrative contacts that way. And I'm still working with some of those clients today from those sites. So my experience is they're great. And that's, I'm more into wanting to do animation, and I've done a lot of good animation jobs, but my Hebrew has really taken off from those.
You remember the youngest age that you really started playing with your accents and acting out like that?
Absolutely. I think growing up, as I mentioned, I have a lot of cousins and family in Israel, and we're not as religious, but we would have Shabbat dinners on Friday. And it was just more of a time to get together with the family and have dinners. And after the dinners, my cousin Donna and I, the two of us would just act out any kind of show you could think of. The Parent Trap, we used to do that. We used to do Lady and the Tramp. And I remember we would act out scenes, and that's when I would use my talent and my voice, and I'd be, oh, look at the cocker Spanish girl. So we would just play around, and I must have been 5, 6, 7 years old. And I remember when we first started out trying those gigs. The joke with me is a lot of times you ask kids, what's your first word? And they say, mom, dad. One of my first words was actually music. So I think a lot of that too is languages, music, accents. It's all about hearing sounds, manipulations, and voices. And that is something I've been fortunate enough to have a good ear, and you just pick up on it. Both of my parents have accents, and you just start hearing different tonalities and different voices, and you're like, oh, I can do that. I can mimic that. And again, growing up in the South, you have all sorts of colors and tones and sounds and voices and how people talk and how they move and how they interact. And that's something I picked up on from a very early age.
Now, you are a musician. What instruments do you play?
I am. I learned piano when I was little. I wasn't as proficient as the rest of my family. I ended up picking up the French horn. I had a neighbor, her sister played the French horn, and I was like, oh, that's a fun instrument. Let me pick that up. And so that's the instrument I play. I had no idea, apparently, that's the hardest instrument in band to play. Good times. When you're trying to do a measure octaves, French horns can go up to like 6, 7 octaves. I had no idea, but yes, that is what I play.
And you continuously play it now, right? You have concerts here in Los Angeles?
I do. I'm currently part of 2 symphonic bands. They're just for fun out in Los Angeles. And okay, that is a brilliant question. I was really anticipating coming to Los Angeles, and I have a friend from LA who was like, listen, your expectations might be a little different. As I mentioned, I came here, I'm really into animation, I'm into Disney, I was into Glee, ABC Family, all these shows that I was trying to pursue, and I thought, especially as a working actor in New York City, I was very fortunate to have been on a TV show. I had done independent films. I had taken a ton of classes. And so I was also SAG-AFTRA. So I was part of the union. I was like, I'm ready to go to LA. I thought it would be a lot easier, is what I'm saying. And I came out here, I realized that it was a lot harder than I thought. First of all, it's a very different market. In New York City, I feel there's a lot of actors that are doing Broadway, they're doing shows, and of course you have all the business clientele. In LA, I think there's a lot more actors. Clearly, that's a lot more saturated. You have marketing professionals that moonlight as actors, or that, oh, I want to get in the field. Oh, my uncle's a director, so I've done some films. And they're not really interested, or they've got connections. And so the competition's a little different. The personalities are different. I'm starting to meet a lot of amazing people. I've met you, and that's definitely changed my perception. When I first got here, New Yorkers are, whatever you say about New Yorkers, we're extremely supportive. Absolutely. We want to collaborate. We want to work together. If you have a gig, they'll come. You wanting to come to a gig, that is something that is very apparent in New York, very indicative of New Yorkers. We're very supporting of each other. In LA, there was a lot of that competition, or, oh, you're a 45-minute drive. I don't think I can make it. And so I didn't have that camaraderie out here, which was very hard for me. Also, if you're non-union, there's a lot more opportunities out there. And more importantly, I had all those beautiful relationships with the casting directors. And you have to start over in LA. So it's like starting from scratch. So it was really, really hard on me when I first got here. And my perception definitely changed. But since I've been here for a while, I've met some beautiful, awesome friends like you that really are accommodating and really are supportive. You find your niche. And I think then LA starts becoming fun again. And then you're like, okay, that was the original thought I had about LA.
Yeah.
PlayStation. When you call PlayStation in Israel, that is my voice that says, welcome to PlayStation. If you would like to connect to the business, please dial 2. So that is also my voice. I've also been able to work on some really awesome animation jobs. So I was able to use a lot of my British stuff, which is great. One thing that was kind of great for one of my auditions is I ended up filming an audition for a commercial, a face-to-face commercial. It was for a British gamer. So I like my games and playing games. I grew up with brothers, so I had to do what they did. So Xbox, PlayStation, that was all me, very competitive. And I had to hold a controller and pretend to be British. And I was able, which is a fun little trick for everyone out there, I used that audition and I pulled the voice over. I pulled the voice MP3 from that video and was able to use just the voice part, and I cut and edited part of it and submitted that to an audition and ended up booking based on that. I unfortunately didn't get the commercial, but I ended up getting a voiceover job, ironically, from that commercial because I pulled the audio from that commercial.
So right now with the climate, are you working in the studio now or are you working from home?
I've been really fortunate. I'm able to work from my house. So I have a home studio, so I can film a lot from there. And I even spoke to a friend, and I've had to do this as well. I've done an audition on my cell phone and have been able to do that way. But for the most part, I have a home studio at home. So that is beautiful because actually all my jobs that I've done recently are from my home studio.
What is your first love? Is it music? Is it voiceover? Or is it acting? Or all of the above?
That's a very good question. I still believe on camera is one of my favorite things to do. It just is. What I like about voiceover, it's like it's a little bit different where you don't have to think about, like I said, what you're wearing, what you're doing. It's more about your voice. But there is something about being on set, sitting in that chair, as you know, getting the makeup, really networking with other people. I'm definitely a social person. And I think when you're on set, you are, like you said, meeting your tribe. It's the first time, growing up in the South, we had a lot of Broadway, a lot of theater. Theater was huge in Tallahassee, and there wasn't a lot of commercial and filming. And I loved theater, I did theater, but I didn't really feel like I bonded with the theater kids and the theater group until I moved to New York. And I was on set for the first time, and I was like, these are my people. I get it. We're the same. We think a lot. We think the same. And so when you're on set and you're with those like-minded people, there's just something that makes you come alive. So as much as I love my little home studio and relaxing and doing those little things, there's something about being on set that I prefer. Special. When you're doing voiceover, of course, there are loop groups. And for those that don't know, it's when you're doing a scene on a TV show, the show Sex and the City, for instance, or Ted Lasso, you're doing one of those TV shows and they're at a restaurant scene or a bar scene. All those voices, you see the background actors. Those are background actors, but they're not allowed to talk. So all the voices that you hear in the background, oh, we should get a drink. Oh, we should do this. Blah, blah, blah. Those are all voice actors, and they all form a group. A lot of them are called loop groups, and it's usually a group of actors that provide the voices. So if Russian science lab, you're going to hear a bunch of Russian people talking. And again, those are all voiceover actors. So the people that you're seeing are the extras, the background that are walking in the restaurant, but the actual voices you hear to make it sound like they're in a restaurant or a bar, those are loop group actors. Loop groups are coveted amongst the voiceover group, and it's really hard to get in them because that is where, ironically, voiceover, that's where the money's at. These loop group actors are sometimes making more than the actors, way, 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 way more than background work, but it is coveted. And usually it's the same group of people, and no one wants to get out because you go in, you do a session, 3-4 hours, and you're done. And you're walking out with a fabulous paycheck. And again, it's a fun deal, and it's really hard to get in there, find one. And so as a voiceover artist, you're like, wait, the loop group unicorn. That's what you're trying to get into.
Let's talk. I know you talked a little bit about challenges, and I think this is so important for people to know. There's always going to be challenges and successes with what we do, but I want to talk about your challenges with being a voiceover, a dialect, accent artist, and an actor and a musician. What are some of the challenges that come with that?
There are so many challenges that come with that. I would say first and foremost, to be a voiceover actor, you have to spend the time and energy. It's a full-time job, like any other job. It's like medical school. In order to be a doctor, you've got to go to medical school and you've got to do your residency. So for voiceover, it's the same thing. You have to get your voiceover reel. You have to spend money on taking classes. You have to make sure everything is perfection. Yes, can you just do a little job here and there? Absolutely. But if you want to take this career seriously, like anything else, you really have to put the time and effort. And the same thing is done for commercial work. The same thing is done for film and television. Commercial acting is very different than film and TV. It's very different than Broadway. It's very different than theater. And you have to spend the time and energy and get the headshots. You need certain looks, certain character looks for commercial. You need certain looks, certain types for dramatic. You need to take the classes. You need to connect with a casting director. You need to work on your film reel. And it's the same thing for music. You've got to take the classes. You got to go to rehearsal. And one of the challenges is if you're trying to balance and do it all, it's a lot of time and energy, taking all those classes, spending all that money. And that's one of the biggest challenges, is kind of honing in. Yes, you can do it all, but if you spend all your time doing it all, you're going to miss out on perfecting one of the bigger projects. So I've been recently focusing on on-camera work, especially my on-camera commercial. That's what I've been working on recently. And so unfortunately, my voiceover's taken a little bit of a sidestep because I've been focusing on taking that commercial classes. And as you know, as someone that takes a lot of classes, and you're constantly trying to better yourself. So one of them has to give a little bit while the other one's waiting. I will say, I keep finding these little challenges that are coming up. One, you and I have talked about this many times, is on camera.
Yes.
Everything that is moving to this on-camera auditions, that has been a major challenge.
Videotaping ourselves.
Videotape, because now you have to get the right lighting and the right look, and you have to become an editor and a producer and a director. And these are things, even now in the voiceover world, you have to edit your stuff and you have to figure out, you have to figure out the programs. So these are all new things that you're learning about that are major challenges. And I know it has definitely affected me for some of my auditions where it's like, I feel like I could have rocked that if I was in person because there's that energy. But when you're doing an audition on camera, you have no idea. And you also don't get to sit face to face with the casting director and you don't get to build that relationship. And I think that has been some of my biggest challenges too, is just really navigating that world.
Yeah. Now, what are some of the successes that you've had that you feel has been a big success for you since you've been here in Los Angeles, Hollywood?
Off the bat, I'm saying some of the biggest successes, which might be interesting to some of the listeners, is really the connections I've made. Some of the connections I've made have really elevated my career. Just some of my friends that I've met, I was on set and met this wonderful guy and we started talking and he said, hey, I'm writing a web series and you should audition. And I did, and I ended up booking the lead role for that. So it's called Love Games of Long Beach. And it's this guy who dates some crazy women that he finds in Long Beach. And I ended up doing a role. I was one of the characters, not the main role. And I was working at a grocery store for one of the episodes. And then he did another episode where I ended up booking the lead. And it was one of the coolest things I've ever done. It was my first kind of quote horror thing. Because again, crazy scenes that he dates these crazy women he finds in LA. And I ended up becoming this like vampire / devil that went to sleep and woke up and became this. And it was really cool to play this scary character. I had to wear contacts for the first time, which was really fun. So that's been one of my successes. I met you. We have a movie coming out, and I've been able to do a couple other small films, independents. But again, I think, and especially for the voiceover world, I booked, like I said, the PlayStation, Alacadia. I have a ton of clients. I feel really fortunate abroad. So I'm able to work with those. And those are all networks that I found in Los Angeles. Listeners, and this is what I always tell people, it's the vowels. If you listen, it's literally the vowels. That's how, again, besides the nuances we were talking about earlier, the 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 little pauses, it's the vowels. So if you say A, E, I, O, U, in South, we are a little bit lazier with we take our time. Mm-hmm. So we say A, E, I, O, U. And if you can do that, you know where to place your mouth. So that's an easy trick. A, E, I, O, U. Proper British accent, they close it a little bit. A, E, I, O, U. So once you say that, it's really easy. It's the placement of the mouth of how you're going to do it. Irish, the mouth is a little bit more back. So if I say A, E, I, O, U, that's the Irish accent. It's a little bit nicer, you understand? So it's how you're doing the vowels. And a lot of times, once you do that, or you have a word, Ireland, and then I know where to place the mouth. Do you understand? And it's just those little tricks that you can do with the mouth and how you move your armature, and that's how you can do the accents. And that's the major trick.
Oh, can you do a Russian accent?
The Russian, if I say the word Russian, then it comes out. It's not as difficult, but it can be. And again, you don't say the V, the W. This is what you do.
Oh my gosh, this is so great, Lia. I love it.
I will say the other fun thing, I did a Pakistani homeowners commercial, and that was awesome. And eHarmony was another big success story I've had. I did a voiceover for that. But the Pakistani was my favorite because I was literally at home doing my accent, and you see me in person, and I don't know if I could necessarily do Pakistani on camera, but for, again, challenges, full circle, it doesn't matter where ethnicity-wise you're from, what age you are, it's how you come across, as you're fully aware of this. Doesn't matter if your dad's black or white or Chinese or wherever he's from. If you don't look it, unfortunately, this industry is very hard pressed. I've gone into many auditions. I don't know if you look Hispanic enough. So, and doesn't matter if I'm Latina, if I don't look Latina enough, but with voiceover, it doesn't even matter what you look like. If you can do that accent, for the most part, I do think the industry is changing. They are trying to get a little bit more authentic. Same thing with on camera. They are going to do a Pakistani. They do want the Pakistani. But I was able and feel very fortunate enough that I was able to convey my accent well enough that I could pass that on.
Well, that's good. Those are great successes, I think. I feel like, you really have done really well since you've come to Los Angeles. Do you have any books? Because a lot of our listeners are probably from all around the world, and they're probably interested in voiceover. Nowadays, like you said, you can audition from home if you have a studio. Now you can go on YouTube. You can learn how to put together a studio. But do you have any books ideas or any type of reading or any other resources if they don't live in Los Angeles where they can get started on voiceover?
Yeah, I would also, one of my teachers, Paul Liberty, has a book that I was looking at. Is really great for animation. I was thinking about this earlier, certain books that I'm really invested in, and I have a cheesy one for my listeners. The Secret, Law of Attraction, whether you believe in that or not, I think that's really important. Just the main thing is believing in yourself. And I know that can sound really cheesy, but you just have to keep going. There are many, many times, going back to a previous comment of my perception of LA, where I was literally like, I need to go back to New York. I miss it. I was having all this success. My biggest success, honestly, was I was on a TV show in New York City. I was on a TV show called Mercy. I played a waitress on the show, and I thought I made it. Like I said, I was on a TV show, co-star role, great. That's how I got my union card. I was ready to rock and roll. And I came out here, and it's been harder to attain those co-stars. And there's something about pursuing and to keep going and to keep knocking at that doors, breaking those ceilings, and having the belief, whether it's hard, to continue to pursue your passions and to pursue something that you can't give up even if you try. And I think if you say, yes, I'm going to be on Disney, then you're going to do everything you possibly can to make that happen. And I think that's how you get it. Whether it's the power of The Secret, or I think it's because you're putting that knowledge out there and going for it. I think that's the biggest success, or the biggest takeaway you can take from this. Sit at home and veg out, watch a movie. You can find some really beautiful dialogues or monologues from those and start using them.
That's true.
Take a monologue from a video or a TV show and record yourself, because at least that way you're getting yourself on tape, getting yourself on camera.
Glad we talked about this, especially the voice. You gave so much good information on voiceover work and how to get started, and thank you so much.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you.
I was going to say, I do also have a really awesome tidbit. I think marketing classes are really important for everyone out there. There's a woman, Dallas Travers. I've taken a lot of her classes. She does marketing. She's wonderful. She's got a lot of books as well. She does online classes. She's wonderful for how to market yourself. And one tidbit that I thought was brilliant, I believe she told me, or if not, I've heard this, but one really great thing is if you're ever interested in the on-camera world, IMDB is a wonderful source. IMDB is Internet Movie Database, and it lists the TV shows, the films, especially the TV shows. If you scroll down, if you look at the cast, don't look at the lead actors, but look at the co-stars. Look at the people that are doing 1 to 5 lines. Those like little roles that would be easier to book. Find out who they are. Find out who the casting director is. Find out who the agent is. Go work backwards, and that's how you can get involved that way. Especially find out the casting directors. And the same thing works for voiceover. You can find out the voiceover people. Find out the casting directors, and for anyone that's not in LA, not in New York, not in those markets, take advantage right now of the online courses, online classes. Find those casting directors, get in front of them, take their classes, see what they have to offer. And that's how you can find exactly what you want to really get started in this business.
Lia, I just want to thank you so much for coming to Up and Comers, and your advice has been so remarkable. And I look forward to seeing you on Disney. I look forward to seeing you on television and everything that you're doing. I think a lot of your talents are going to merge together into something special for you. Everyone that's watching us today on Up and Comers of Hollywood on YouTube, come over to our podcast on Amazon Prime Music, our Spotify, and Pandora. So if you're just jogging along and you have a long car ride, just turn us on. I have a lot of more interviews like this of wonderful people who are up and coming that have wonderful advice for all of you. With that, I just want to say stay kind, but be kind to yourself first. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lia.
Thank you again for having me.
Of course.